I discovered the haunted surveillance footage that reveals a creepy family curse. I never should have opened that door. The chill ran down my spine like ice water, paralyzing my senses. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if something unfathomable lay just beyond the edge of perception. I was living my usual routine, telling myself I'd just take a quick peek at my old family's video archives. It was meant to be a nostalgic trip down memory lane, simple enough. But that day, the atmosphere in the dimly lit room shifted. Darkness pressed against the windows like an unwelcome shadow, a weight in the stillness that made my heart race. Whispers echoed faintly, barely audible yet unnerving, as if the very walls were sharing secrets I had no right to hear. I glanced around, uneasy. The flickering lights overhead cast eerie shapes that danced across the dusty floor, playing tricks with my mind. I swallowed hard, trying to shake off the growing dread. Then, without warning, the strange noises began. A creaking floorboard, a clatter from somewhere deep in the house. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. Objects seemed to shift in my peripheral vision, but when I turned, nothing was there. Just shadows, waiting and watching. My pulse quickened, the tightness in my chest making it hard to breathe. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown to a revelation I wasn't ready for. I stumbled upon the old surveillance footage by chance, a forgotten relic of a past I hadn't really wanted to face. As I pressed play, the familiar faces flickered on screen, family events, laughter, love. But as the night wore on, the footage became something twisted, an uncanny series of events that blurred the line between reality and something far darker. I felt bile rise in my throat as the curse unfolded before my eyes. Dread settled deeper into my bones, sinking its claws in tight. In those grainy images, family members moved almost like marionettes, strings tugged by unseen hands. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were trapped, caught in a web of misfortune and despair. The whispers grew louder in my mind, the strange noises almost rhythmic now, pulsating like a heartbeat. Then came the moment that twisted my gut and made my skin crawl. A figure suddenly appeared at the edge of the frame, just a shadow at first, but then it stepped forward. I could barely make out the features, a twisting blend of familiar and grotesque, eyes glinting with a sinister awareness. Panic flooded my senses as I instinctively jerked away from the screen. I could hear my own breathing fast, frantic. My heart drummed in my ears, a frantic warning. That's when the door slammed shut behind me, a thunderous finality that sent my body into a state of shock. I spun around, ready to face whatever horror awaited me on the other side. But all I could see was silence, an endless void that promised more than I was prepared to handle. And then, from the shadows, the figure stepped closer. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure lingered just beyond the threshold of reality, a manifestation of the nightmare that seemed to stretch and bend the very fabric of existence. I blinked hard, trying to convince myself it was nothing more than a trick of the light, my overactive imagination fueled by dread. But as my vision focused, the figure sharpened, revealing more of its grotesque familiarity, and I was struck with the dreadful realization it was my mother. Yet, she was not the vibrant woman I had known. This apparition wore a visage twisted by anguish, her eyes hollow and sunken, skin stretched tight against the bones like a grotesque mask. She reached out a skeletal hand that beckoned with a desperate urgency. My body screamed in protest, but my legs betrayed me, drawing me closer against my will. "Help us," her voice echoed, ethereal and fractured, as if it were a distant echo of a long-forgotten plea. It twisted in my mind, clinging to the edges of my consciousness. I hesitated, caught in the horrifying balance between the need to escape and the instinct to assist. The overhead lights flickered violently, bathing the room in strobing visions of despair. Each pulse grew closer until it felt like a heartbeat reverberating through the walls, pulling me further into the dark. As if summoned, chilling whispers encroached, murmuring shattered stories of betrayal and sorrow, of lives merely endured rather than lived. I fumbled backward, aiming for the door, but panic rippled through me like an electric shock. The room transformed, the walls contorted with a malevolent energy that warped my senses. I blinked, and suddenly other figures emerged from the shadows of long-lost relatives, faces twisted, mouths agape as if trying to scream but no sound escaped. They all converged near my mother, their spectral forms stretching beyond reality, an agonizing tableau of wretched souls caught in the throes of the family curse. "Join us," my mother rasped, her outstretched hand trembling, urging me forward. Each heartbeat echoed in the silence, mingling with their silent cries. Was I being dragged into their suffering, or could I save them, break this malevolence once and for all? Frantically, I glanced at the surveillance footage still playing in the background. It revealed the family gatherings, the very moments of life before the curse tethered us to this torment. And that shadow, my heart sank as I realized it had been climbing through the recordings, feeding on despair, spreading its influence one event after another. With desperation rising within me, I scrambled back toward the door, the piercing presence of my mother closing in. The sound of her voice morphed into a terrifying chorus, each familial echo blending into a cacophony of pleas and howls that crushed down upon me. I reached for the doorknob, the cold metal shocking as it collided with my sweat-slicked palm. But just as I turned it, a surge of energy rippled through the room, jerking the door violently from my grasp. From the corner of my eye, I saw the shadow glide forward, twisting into a horrific dance before coalescing into a being entirely different, a figure with icy blue eyes that locked onto me with an insidious hunger. Then, it whispered my name. A sudden wave of nausea crashed over me. In that frozen moment, I became aware of the truth: the curse was far darker, a binding that intertwined not just my family but also me, a new victim in a very old game. The air shimmered with an unseen force, and just like that, the light dimmed, plunging me into suffocating darkness, and then, silence. As the weight of that silence enveloped me, I realized, I was not alone. Something slithered against my skin, brushing past me with a chilling gentleness, and I felt the pulse of another presence looming just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. I could hear it breathing, a low, raspy sound that drew me into this void of uncertainty that I dared to breathe, and my exhale became the only sound in that suffocating darkness. And then, in the chilling quiet, I heard it again, my name, but this time coupled with a sinister laugh that spiraled away into the depth of the void, terrifying and all-consuming. Just as the ground beneath me began to tremble, something emerged from the dark, and a flash of blue light pierced the void. What would I become? As the piercing blue light flooded through the darkness, I felt my heartbeat quicken, an unrelenting drum of anxiety. Figures began to coalesce around me, shadowy shapes that flickered with the brightness of the unknown. Just as the vivid glow enveloped me, I was thrust back into the haunting memories that had distorted my familial ties: laughter over warm meals, the soothing cadence of my mother's voice reading bedtime stories, all tumbling out of focus and into the abyss. The faces of my family materialized, but they were not the cheerful visages of my youth. Instead, they glared at me from the fringes of my vision, eyes hollow with despair and mouths twisted in phenomenal agony, as if the very act of witnessing this moment was a torturous burden. Each remembered smile twisted grotesquely, corrupted into cries of anguish. I stumbled back, catching my foot on the edge of a table. An unearthly white light radiated from a form hovering before me, stark against the shades of malevolence that swelled in the corners of the room. The figure morphed, and in its fractured visage, I recognized my mother again, or what used to be her. "Do you not wish to understand?" Her voice wailed, now a chorus of lost souls. "To break the cycle, to save us?" But did I want to understand? What truth lay beneath this miasma of horror? An ache began to burrow into my chest, an unbearable pressure seeking a way out. I felt as if I had become the keystone to a crumbling archway, caught between worlds, the living and the restless spirits. The blue light grew brighter and began to reveal images, jagged snapshots of family gatherings, each one tinged with a subtle darkness creeping in. The laughter was muted, and sorrow seeped through the cracks. They showed a family thriving on the surface while a creeping despair and curses took root beneath. But as the memories played, more sinister details gripped my focus. I saw a figure in the background, always lingering, an oddity captured in each moment, a predator cloaked in joviality, feeding on our joys while weaving our fate into a web of malevolence. Every moment captured is a thread they spin an offering, my mother's apparition hissed. The revelation nestled in my mind like a venomous tick, burrowing deeper. Desperation clawed at me. Even in my dread, it was impossible to remain passive. I needed to escape this enthralling nightmare, but how? The door was lost to me, sealed as if the house itself had become a living entity, wanting to guard its secrets fiercely. Stop them! My voice broke out, cracking with an urgency that echoed against the walls. I will not join you. At that, the apparitions recoiled, their faces morphed into masks of despair and resentment, and they writhed in the flickering light. Slowly, a new presence emerged, an unseen force that chilled the air, swirling dark mist around my ankles, edges clawing at my skin as if searching for my lifeblood. The thing from before the shadow loomed larger now, unfurling tendrils of darkness that twisted and whispered around me. Do you think they'll save you? It spoke, its voice smooth yet dripping with malice. You belong to us. This realm is but a fragment of your existence, a fleeting dream juxtaposed against the promise of eternity. What the hell do you want from me? I screamed, adrenaline flooding my veins as I felt the oppressive weight closing in. The laughter returned, softer this time, a haunting, echoing lullaby that pierced my skin with an icy shiver. Join us. The shadow glided closer, and in that chill, I glimpsed a long-forgotten pain stirring within me, an uprooted memory. My hands grazed the cold surface of the table, and I suddenly felt something steadying beneath, a pulse of warmth from the heart of the wood, an anchor amidst the storm. For the truth, child. To unravel the very fabric of what binds us. The lament broke through the cacophony, a peal of remorse that shattered the air. It turned the room around me into a vortex of terror, pulling at my resolve with relentless fury. As I gripped the table tighter, the lights flickered ominously. The tableau shifting. My family wailed, their sorrow inching closer, their pallid faces moving in sync, as if orchestrated by a sinister conductor hidden in the shadows. It was as if they were trying to reclaim me, their energy intertwining with the pervasive darkness, an insidious dance now drawing me into their fold. In that moment, a shattering realization struck. To sever the curse, I would have to confront the shadow in the deepest furies of my own past. But just as the understanding ignited a spark of resolve in my fractured heart, the table abruptly cracked beneath my grip and fissures shot through the floor, dragging me back toward the spectral horror. Choose. The shadow shrieked, eyes blazing with spectral energy, the weight of hunger and want suffocating me. I could feel the twisted roots of my family's past clawing at my very essence. The abyss gaped wider, and I was teetering on the edge, visions of my mother reaching for me, drowning under the weight of their despair. A decision loomed, the very concept of choice weighing heavy in the air, solid as a blade at my throat, and then, as the ground trembled violently, both past and future collapsing into an entwined nightmare, a series of thunderous crashes echoed through the house. Someone was breaking in. The entrance burst open, revealing a dark figure, an unwelcome intruder in this tumult of anguish and despair. I had no way of knowing whether this was salvation or a deeper horror waiting to consume whatever shred of light remained. But, the desperate cries from my family rang louder, merging with the crashing, until, at last, everything fell into silence again just as suddenly as it had erupted. What now stood between me and the abyss wasn't merely my own salvation but a racing heart that was more alive than ever against the deadened whispers swirling all around me. The silence was oppressive, wrapping around me like a shroud as the dark figure loomed in the threshold, an impenetrable shadow against the sparse light. I felt the hairs on my neck stand at attention, the remnants of my faltering resolve bleeding into a chilling array of uncertainty. Just moments before, I had been teetering on the brink, battling against the churn of my family's despair and the suffocating shadow that craved me. But now, the house held its breath, the air thick with an unspoken tension, as I watched the figure slowly lift its head, a familiar, cruel smile bending its lips. "Did I interrupt something?" it asked, voice dripping with a mix of mocking concern and genuine delight. The delight was traditionally reserved for a predator savoring the sight of its prey caught in a snare. What are you?" I stammered, wild-eyed and trembling as I took a step back, my heart pounding so loudly it practically echoed back to me. "Perhaps the question is why I'm here." The figure took a step forward, and I felt the tangible weight of that step, each footfall resonating through the floorboards, vibrating deep into the marrow of my bones. It shifted into the dim light, revealing a glint in its eye reminiscent of the malevolence lurking in the hearts of my family. The resemblance was too uncanny to ignore. This intruder had a familiar silhouette. It was as if it had crawled from the depths of my family's history, woven into every shadow that haunted their smiles. "All those memories," it continued, voice an unsettling lullaby. "I can show you what really happened. After all, you've been so near to the truth but just out of reach." It wasn't just a voice, it was laced with the echoes of anguish, each syllable like a dagger. "No. I won't listen to you." I shot back, desperation fueling my resistance. Behind me, the spectral figures pulsed at the edges of my vision, urging me, pulling me into their collective agony, their faces contorting in silent screams as they reached for me. "Are you so sure?" The figure mocked, stepping closer, and the light flickered again, momentarily illuminating its face. Stark recognition flooded my mind. It was a familial ghost, a long-lost ancestor whose likeness had been twisted into a grotesque parody of the figures I had loved. I had seen this face in old photographs, smiles masking the treachery etched deep in our bloodline. "I can break this cycle," it hissed, reaching out a hand that shimmered with dark energy. "Together, we can end the suffering." Rage surged through me, cutting through the veil of fear. "This isn't love, this is deception." I screamed, awareness blossoming in the heart of my terror. The curse was a chain forged by betrayal, hidden in smiles, wrapped in familial love, and I wasn't going to be shackled to it any longer. The moment that resolve crystallized, the shadows reacted violently, thrumming with impatience. My family's wails crescendoed, a cacophony that filled the air, blending into one haunting melody of despair. The walls themselves seemed to pulse, vibrating with a life of their own, threatening to overtake me in an all-consuming wave, but the dark figure only laughed, the sound reverberating through the house, warping the very fibers of reality. "You still do not comprehend. There is no escape. You are tangled in this web, and you shall remain as they did forever." Fury blinded me, and without a second thought, I lunged. Grasping a crystal vase from the table, I hurled it toward the figure. The shattering glass sent jagged shards spiraling through the air, but instead of striking flesh, it dissipated, merging into the dark mist that swirled closer. "What a futile display!" It shrieked with chaotic delight as the shadows enwrapped me, suffocating and tightening until I gasped for air. Each heartbeat was a drum of desperation, and as the shadows closed in, I dropped to my knees in surrender. Everything had turned eldritch, a vortex of stories woven through time. Yet, as I sank, I felt the warmth underneath the floorboards pull stronger, a latent energy calling out to my resolve, and then, amidst the clamor and grasping darkness, I heard it. A voice, a distinct, sweet whisper, laced with reverence and warmth. "Find me." In that fleeting moment, I froze, an inexplicable understanding blooming inside me. The mystery wasn't confined within the shadows or the figures, it lay within me, a forgotten memory yearning for release, a family tied together not by joy but by an unspeakable horror. "Find me," the voice repeated softly, echoing through the fractured remnants of my memories, but before I could comprehend the meaning, the ground beneath me erupted, shattering like glass. I was yanked violently through the rift of the collapsing threshold, hurtling past whispers of warnings and cries of betrayal, as the very fabric of reality tore apart. As the darkness consumed everything around me, I glimpsed one last fleeting image. A face that had haunted every dream, trapped within the utter chaos, a child, frightened and alone, clinging to the twisted threads of our fate, and then, nothing. I was suspended in a void, bound by a gravity of despair and confusion, until a sudden rush of light surrounded me, a blinding white that scorched my retinas. When the brightness waned, I found myself sprawled on a brittle wooden floor, the air heavy with dust and decay. I blinked rapidly, struggling to lacquer my mind with clarity as fragments of memories coalesced. The room around me was disheveled, incongruently familiar yet undeniably foreign. Frayed curtains billowed like specters in an unseen wind, and the faded wallpaper pulsed with life, swirling into grotesque shapes that danced along the edges of my vision. "Where am I?" I croaked, trying to sit up, only to be stung by a sharp pain gripping my side. I glanced down to see dark, sticky fluid seeping from an unseen wound, oiling my skin and mingling with countless dust motes. My heart hammered wildly, edging into panic, but I forced myself to breathe deeply, to take in the fading remnants of this forsaken place. I lurched to my feet, the wooden floor creaking under my weight. A sallow glow emanated from a cracked window, the sun desperately fighting through layers of grime, casting the room in a melancholic hue. But the dim lighting only heightened the morbid curiosities adorning the walls. Framed photographs of a grim-faced family peered back at me, their eyes seemingly alive, tracking my movements as I stumbled through the clutter. I approached the first photograph, a stiff portrait of a woman with a striking resemblance to me. Her expression was eerily blank, but the discontent wedged between her lips spoke volumes of the anguish that tied our fates. I stumbled as an overwhelming sensation washed over me. Her sorrow seeped into my very soul, anchoring me to this place, yet as I inspected more images, I noticed a disturbing pattern. Each face bore faint scratches upon their features, hints of wrath etched into that unyielding canvas. Were these marks a symptom of a curse, or were they scars of betrayal? "Find me," the whisper echoed again, laced with urgency, but now it gripped my heart with fear. The sound seemed to emanate from somewhere deeper within the torn walls of the house, weaving through the memories as if spinning a web of paths leading to their source. As if compelled, I turned away from the haunting eyes of my ancestors and ventured deeper into the house. Shadows slithered against the walls like serpents, flickering out of sight whenever I dared to look directly. The atmosphere thickened with a rancid stench, musty decay, mingled with the faint aroma of something metallic. Then, I stumbled through a doorway and found myself in what had been a child's room. Toys lay strewn across the floor, their joyous colors faded to muted memories. Soot-blackened edges clawed at the walls where childish drawings had once thrived, replaced now by twisted, sorrowful portrayals of despair. Figures trapped in an abyss, arms raised not in ecstasy but imploring freedom from chains that bound them to the ground. In the far corner of the room, a small desk stood forlornly, the surface cluttered with crumpled papers and crayon drawings. Heart racing, I approached and knelt beside it, shoving aside the debris until something chilled my very essence. A tape recorder, cracked but intact. Shaking hands encircled it, and as I pressed play, a crackling voice reverberated through the quiet, soft and childlike, yet rich with palpable fear. "If you're hearing this, then it didn't end as we thought. The whispers always come back and they will find you, too." It was the voice of a child, trembling with anguish, tears lacing every syllable. As the tape crackled on, the child continued, recounting harrowing tales of shadows that lived and breathed in the corners, of faces that appeared out of nowhere, and of an unseen hand that threatened to pull them into darkness. They spoke of a time when they tried to leave but instead found themselves deeper into the house's grip, eternally intertwined with the unwelcoming walls. Suddenly, the recording cut off with a haunting scream, sending shards of ice through my bones. My heart pounded in my ears, a wild drumbeat echoing my rising terror. A new understanding dawning on me. Before I could react, the very air shifted, coiling and twisting violently as echoes of the past slammed into me. The whisper returned, louder, more urgent. "Find me." An icy finger traced my spine, sending a wave of dread through the core of my being. I spun around slowly, horrified by the realization that the shadows were not merely reflections of my fears, they were alive, watching, waiting for me to unveil their sinister secrets. Just then, a thudding sound erupted behind me, swift as lightning, followed by a rush of icy breath grazing my neck. As I whirled to face the source, the door slammed shut, the lock clanking into place. Panic clawed at my throat as shadows surged, twisting into grotesque forms until they melded seamlessly with the air. The darkness engulfed me entirely, leaving me clinging to the hope of uncovering the truth, but that hope flickered like a dying flame, the whispers becoming a discordant chorus echoing in the consuming void. And then, amidst the vortex of darkness, I sensed something brushing against my leg, something alive, belonging to this haunted legacy. A small hand tightened around my ankle, its grip cold and unyielding, anchoring me to the remnants of my family's curse. Something whispered, a dying plea painted in desperation, "Stay forever." The shadows surged, pulling me down, and as I cried out for release, I understood my fate lay entwined not merely with the family I desperately sought to escape but with a truth so monstrous, it could shape the very world I had known. And just as I felt myself slip into the abyss, a new voice shouted back, brimming with fury and anguish, "Don't let them take you." Suddenly, the house trembled violently, splitting wide. In that last moment of clarity, the play of light shimmered beyond the darkness, hinting at something trying to break free, a child, calling to me, hope wrapped in fear. And then, I was free-falling into the inky depths, heart racing as I clawed for something, anything, before the ground fell away beneath me, plunging me into an unrelenting darkness filled with shadows, screams, and truths that were yet carefully hidden. The pit swallowed me whole, thrusting me into a sensory realm where time no longer existed. I plummeted down a kaleidoscope of fading colors, ghostly images swirling around in a haunting tableau, familiar faces from the photographs, now contorted in agony, their mouths stretched wide as if trying to scream but were silenced by the thick veil of darkness. I landed, gasping, on damp earth that gave way under my weight. Viscous mud clung to my limbs as I struggled to regain my balance, the air thick with the stench of rot and despair. As I pushed myself up, vision scuttled at the periphery of my sight, tiny whimpers echoing through the air as if the very ground held secrets too vile to unearth. "Help us," faint voices quavered around me, indistinct yet heavy with palpable sorrow. I turned, frantic, but the darkness only deepened. Jagged roots curled upward, weaving into grotesque shapes that seemed to flicker with a malevolent life of their own. Shadows skittered between them, and I sensed hidden eyes, watching, yearning. Panic tightened its grip, and I stumbled along a narrow path illuminated dimly by an unknown source, the remnants of my sanity unraveling thread by thread. I soon came across a dilapidated wooden door, half buried beneath layers of grime and encroaching weeds. A sense of inevitability pulled me toward it, an insistent beckoning that felt beyond my control. With trembling fingers, I tugged at the rusted handle, feeling a shock rush through me as it turned, the door creaking open to reveal a pitiful room illuminated only by the flickering light of a single, dying bulb. Dust motes danced through the pale glow, caught in the clutches of unseen forces. Upon a rickety table lay an old TV, the screen flickering like a firefly caught in a web. It hummed softly, drawing me closer, as if it held the answers to the turmoil that had ensnared me. The crackle of static filled the air, resonating with the whispers that haunted my ears. As I pressed the power button, a feed of grainy footage flickered to life. I braced myself, heart sinking as I recognized the living room from the portraits. In that moment, the reality of what I was seeing gripped me like a vice. The family, captured in an agonizing loop of memory, moving silently in the background as an unseen force tormented them. There I was, my own likeness, wrapped in the familiarity of their sorrow. Each motion, each flicker of the eyes spoke of a cursed existence, played out in the film as surreal theater, mocking, taunting. I gasped in horror as I noticed that the children moved closer to me with each loop of the footage, their faces twisted with desperation, eyes pleading for escape. Suddenly, the screen vibrated violently, and the pictures morphed, unveiling stifled faces beneath the layers of time, twisted, anguished silhouettes of previous generations staring back, their mouths set in grim lines, fear and rage tangled within eyes like bottomless pits. The scenes twisted chaotically, revealing something grotesque and unfathomable, moments of families huddled in terror, their eyes shifting toward unseen tormentors lurking in the corners. The frantic voices rose in a horrifying crescendo, a mixture of angry wails and heart-wrenching sobs, piercing through the stagnant air. Release. We are bound. They cried, the rawness of their despair flooding the room until it dripped down the walls, mixing with layers of grime and shadows. As the collective wail built to a heart-stopping climax, I glanced around the room, feeling the shadows coiling tighter, creeping closer from the fringes of my vision. My resolve faltered as I began to see more figures emerging, indistinct but undeniably their half-living, half-echo, trapped in the limbo created by this relentless curse, and when a shadow slowly began to detach itself from the wall, a figure looming, eyes glowing like smoldering embers. A slow, sinister grin unfurled across its face, stretching wider with each heartbeat that echoed in my chest. It approached, sliding along like liquid night, the urge to flee overtaken by a primal curiosity. "Help us," it rasped, voice like gravel. "You can be one of us, set us free." The torrent of fear crashed over me, but the movement of the TV screen caught my attention again. There was a child, not mine, not any of the figures I had watched, but one who seemed to transcend the generations, a girl with wild hair and eyes wide, glistening pools of hope amidst a storm of despair. She reached forward, hands splayed as if reaching for connection. "Find the others, before it's too late." Before I could react to her plea, the wall behind me shuddered violently, and the door slammed shut, the echo reverberating like a grim finale. The shadows surged, pressing closer, their whispers morphing into an unholy chant, weaving together a tapestry of despair that threatened to consume me. I turned back to the screen, heart racing. Another image flickered into view, capturing a moment where the girl evaded the shadows, a path laid before her through tangled roots, a fleeting chance for salvation. But as I focused, I realized I was not watching. I was in the scene, the darkness tightening around me, the camera focused on my terrified face as the shadow suffocated hope into silence. The last thing I saw as the screen shimmered and distorted was the girl's gleaming eyes, her voice echoing from the void, "Help us before you join us." A bone-chilling cold enveloped me, and then it was all shadow. As screams filled my ears, I felt myself being pulled into the very maw of the darkness. I was falling once more, deeper into their collective anguish, and I understood I wasn't merely watching their fate, I was a part of it, destined to join the ranks of the cursed unless I could find a way to break the cycle. But in this cacophony of despair, I realized something else, a truth flickering just out of reach. Someone, or something, knew where I was meant to go next. And just before my consciousness faded into the darkness, I heard it clearly, a child's voice, piercing through the stillness, "You have to wake up, now." In that haunting moment, the shadows roared with anticipation, and I braced myself, hoping against hope to find the way before it was too late. I awoke with a jolt, the familiar damp earth replaced by cold, hard linoleum. The fluorescent lights above flickered menacingly, casting a harsh glow over the room that felt all too clinical yet suffocatingly oppressive. My breaths came rapidly, filled with a sense of urgency that drove me to my feet. I was back in my childhood home, but everything felt wrong, tainted. The air seemed to vibrate with a whisper, a haunting hush that teetered on the edge of something terrible. I stumbled toward the hallway, the walls adorned with faded photographs of the family depicted on the cursed TV. Each image seemed alive, the faces still twisted in that eternal dance of despair. I could feel their eyes boring into me, their silent pleas crawling under my skin. "Help us," the voice echoed, but this time, it wasn't a distant wail. It resonated deep, wrapping around my spine like icy fingers. With each step, my heart hammered louder, drowning out the whispers that urged me forward. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with doors. Each door bore an unsettling heaviness as if they concealed unspeakable horrors. Instinct gripped me, a primal awareness that I had to find that girl, the one who had pleaded for help. She was the key, I was certain. Pressing forward, I reached a door that seemed to hum with energy, the wood warm beneath my palm. I pushed it open, revealing a small room scattered with old toys and decaying remnants of childhood, a rusted rocking horse, dolls with missing limbs, their hollow eyes watching. In the far corner, I spotted something unusual, an old-fashioned projector whirring to life, casting flickering images onto the grimy wall. I felt drawn toward it, the same magnetic pull that had led me to the TV screen before. As I stepped closer, the images sharpened, revealing unsettling scenes of laughter and joy that soon twisted into terror. A family outing, then shadows bursting from the trees, darkness swallowing their smiles that I could feel the air thicken, weighted with dread as a soft cry intermingled with the projector's hum. The girl appeared again, her features clearer now, her eyes wide with desperation. "You have to find the others. They're still here, trapped." The projector flickered violently, images stitching together thoughts of escape and darkness. I turned slowly, sensing a presence behind me, the atmosphere crackling with morbid energy. The door through which I had entered slammed shut, a thunderous finality that ignited a rush of panic. "Stay with us," a disembodied voice echoed, a low rumble vibrating through the walls. Shadows began to pool and swell, amalgamating into shapes that mimicked the children from the photographs. The lost family members twisted together in a grotesque unity, their faces emerging from the dark, mouths stretching into fits of agony. I staggered backward, my heart racing as I frantically searched the room for an exit. The shadows advanced, engulfing the toys, wrapping around them like thick smoke. The air ignited with a smell of burning wood and charred remnants of life. "Release us!" They screamed as one, voices becoming a single entity, reverberating off the walls. Suddenly, the projector sputtered and died, plunging the room into darkness. I squinted, desperation clawing at me. And then, in the suffocating black, I heard it, the gentle humming of the girl's voice, but it shifted, layering with the rising choir of shadows. "Help us or it will take you too." I felt the chill creep up my spine, each word laced with a horrific truth that solidified my worst fears. Before I could shout, a blinding flash lit the room and the shadows lunged, coiling around me, their chilling whispers crescendoing into a deafening roar. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable, but then silence. Heavy and oppressive, profound, nothing but the echo of my heartbeat. When I opened my eyes, I found myself standing in a different room, a mirror reflecting my terrified face. But the reflection wasn't just mine. Behind me, figures formed a spectral family staring with hollow eyes, mouths agape in silent screams. Stretching forward as if to pull me into their despair. "Choose," a voice commanded, deep and guttural, resonating from the depths of the very walls around me. "Who will you save?" And at that moment, the choice hung before me like a noose: the girl, the family, the shadows. They all pleaded, a cacophony of souls vying for salvation, each demanding their place. My heart raced as I realized what hung in the balance: salvation or damnation. The line blurred until I felt I might drown beneath their collective cries. "Time is running out," the voice urged, and I knew instinctively that whatever I chose next would seal my fate. "Choose wisely, or join us forever." Behind me, the figures began to shimmer and blur, closing in, and I felt the cold touch of their desperate fingers brush against my skin. The shadows behind me surged with life, hungry for my decision, and just like that, the overwhelming tide of dread crashed over me, leaving me teetering on the edge of despair. "Choose. Quickly." The room trembled, the walls closing in as the darkness roared violently, ready to consume me whole. My heart pounded in my chest, and as I prepared to make my fateful choice, I heard it again, her voice, clearer now, whispering the name. Would it be enough to break the curse, or would I find myself irreversibly lost in the shadows? The decision had to be made, and in that moment, I understood, failure was not an option, but the truth I hesitated against could shatter everything I thought I knew. The room swayed around me, shadows twisting in frenetic urgency as if they could sense my hesitation. The faces of the spectral family grew vivid, their expressions contorted into a grotesque medley of rage, pain, and sorrow. It felt as though they wanted me to feel their anguish, to understand the tragedy carved into the very fabric of this house. The thick air buzzed with a tension so strong it threatened to snap. "I can save you," I pleaded, though deep down, a tremor of doubt slithered like a serpent through my thoughts. "Just tell me who." "Her." A voice cried out, erupting from the thrumming silence, a wild scream laced with terror. The ghostly figures surged forward, their clamoring voices forming a deluge of memory, drowning the last remnants of my resolve. "You know who she is. You have to choose her. Behind the throng, I glimpsed the girl again. Her face stood out amidst the chaos, fragile and desperate. Please, you have to choose me, she mouthed, the words barely escaping her lips. And yet, the tears streaming down her cheeks glimmered like icy shards in the dark, hinting at a sinister truth buried beneath her palpable despair. A whirlwind of emotions spiraled through me, and I felt time slow, each agonizing second dragging like a shadowy hand grasping at my heart. The oppressive weight of their pleading intensified, and as I stood on the precipice of choice, the family loomed closer. Their whispers turned violent, an accusatory barrage echoing in my mind. Why linger? Choose now. It's your fault. Just as I was about to call out the name that tremored on my lips, the name that could free the girl from her prison, the room bucked violently as if the house itself was rejecting my decision. The shadows receded marginally, but their presence remained, palpable, suffocating. Choices are forever, choose wisely. With renewed resolve, I screamed, I choose her. But the moment my voice reverberated through the air, the walls shuddered. The howls of rage from the specters thundered like a torrential storm, shaking the very ground beneath me. The girl's eyes widened, flickering through a tumult of relief and terror, melding into an agonizing scream that filled every corner of the room. The shadows erupted, no longer mere darkness but a pulsating mass of energy. They writhed around me, coiling tight, the fabric of reality fraying as I felt myself being pulled apart, my essence swirling in chaotic currents. Foolish. A chorus of voices echoed sinisterly. You cannot save just one. My vision darkened, swirling colors engulfing me like a whirlpool, and then in an instant, I was thrust into a frozen tableau, a memory suspended in time. That I found myself in a remnant of the past, on a sun-drenched porch, the laughter of children ringing like chimes in the air. A family, joyful and innocent, unaware of the evil that lurked just beyond the horizon. Shadows flickered in the periphery, lurking behind the trees like predatory animals biding their time. I turned, momentarily distracted by the innocence of the moment, a fleeting solace stolen in an instant. Suddenly, an unseen force gripped me, pulling me back toward the darkness. I caught a glimpse of the girl, no longer a spectral figure but a child filled with life, yet in that instant, it twisted into something unrecognizable. Her laughter morphed into a screeching wail as she faded, her outline fading into a terrible darkness where the roots of a looming curse festered. Choose again. The voice roared, echoing with a sinister delight. The room around me shifted, melding between the past and present, fragments of lost screams cascading through my ears, drowning out thought. The ground trembled as I stumbled backward, my heart racing with dread. From the corner of my eye, shadows deepened, coiling and roiling into monstrous forms, their mouths opening wide, revealing a void that threatened to suck me in. I felt the vibrations in the air as their whispers grew louder, warnings, accusers, and the sound of countless souls still trapped within the confines of this tortured place. Desperation clawed at my throat. I was running out of time as the shadows pressed closer, swarming around me like gnashing teeth. Choose. They screamed in unison. And as I reeled, memories flashed before me, terrifying images of the family from the photographs, the girl's anguished face, the agony of their entrapment clawing at the edges of my mind. My heart raced, and in that moment of staggering clarity, I felt the immense weight of life and death. Who will you save, her or them? The voice lashed out, a crystal-clear ultimatum amidst a crashing storm. With shadows swirling and the threat of total darkness nipping at my heels, I stood on the edge, gasping for breath, knowing that one final choice would seal the fate of every soul bound by this damned curse. And just as I opened my mouth to scream her name once more, the darkness surged forward, snatching away both my voice and my last shreds of hope, hurling me toward the unimaginable. The walls quaked with the soul's rage, and in that spiraling chaos, a horrific thought bloomed like poisonous flowers. What if my choice didn't matter at all? What if I was destined to join them in despair, lost forever in a fate worse than death? Rage surged through the tempest, and the howls of the condemned echoed in a deafening cacophony, ensnaring my thoughts in a vice grip of despair. As the shadows frantically whipped around me, I felt every pulse of their tortured existence. Their decision to torment was my sentence as well. I clutched my head, feeling a burgeoning madness creeping insidiously into my mind. The room began to distort, walls bending and stretching as though trying to swallow me whole. With each blink, pockets of reality splintered like shattered glass, revealing fleeting glimpses of the family, the flicker of a child's laughter, the strained smiles of parents in the throes of despair. Time felt unmoored, events bleeding into one another until the line between past and present faded into oblivion. Suddenly, I found myself crouched in a dark corner, the atmosphere heavy with a suffocating dread. The musty scent of decay invaded my senses, weighing my heart down as it became apparent that I was not alone. I dared to glance up, knowing dreadfully well what might lurk in the shadows. From the depths of darkness, a pair of eyes glimmered, pinpricks of light that watched me with an intensity that sent shivers cascading down my spine. The fray of whispers grew louder, desperate pleas and tormenting laughter wrapped tightly around my ears. "Join us," a voice cooed, honeyed yet sinister, dripping with malice. "Leave behind the pain of choice. Embrace the family's shadows." I shook my head, the iron grip of fear clawing at my sanity. "No, I can't." I shouted against the oppressive noise, desperation spilling from me like blood from an open wound. Each word was choked, attenuating against the clamor of the lost souls that circled me, demanding their due. "They are but echoes now," the voice echoed again, now stronger, resonating from the depths of darkness. "Their lives are tethered to your wish. Release them and release yourself." Fury and sorrow twisted within me, battling for dominance as I glanced toward the meager slivers of light peering through the chaotic shadows. The girl's name fractured in my throat once more, an almost tangible thing that threatened to unravel me. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered my resolve, the house convulsing violently as if it could no longer contain the weight of its own history. Dust fell from the ceiling like the slow withering of countless memories, spiraling into the air as a fragile reminder that everything here was haunted by their pasts. My heart raced, emotions roiled as I felt the weight of the room pressing down. I took tentative steps toward the light, ready to confront whatever unfathomable evil lay just beyond the veil of illusion. As I approached, something warped and sinister unfolded before me, a flickering image on the floor, like a chilling window into the lives once lived here. It was footage, grainy and distorted, revealing the family in moments of bliss, smiles that slipped unnaturally into frowns, and the girl, laughing until the joy dulled into an eerie silence, swallowed by darkness that flashed across her countenance. But then, the camera began to shake violently, shadows began to encircle the family like tightening ropes, and their faces twisted in a blend of confusion and horror. I pressed closer, captivated and horrified as my heart synced with the frantic rhythm of the footage. The ominous foreshadowing of shadows deepened, seeking not just the family but a new victim, the family's curse stretching its talons toward the lens, hauntingly aware of me as its next prey. "Don't let them take you." A voice rang through the oppressive fog, disembodied and desperate. It was the girl, her spirit warping in the footage, her face pleading. "Run. You're in the line of fire. Choose." Suddenly, the footage froze, the last frame an image of her small hands pressed flat against the glass, her eyes wide with terror. And as her image shattered into millions of fragments, the room echoed with the screams of the family, layers of anguish spilling into the air as the darkness surged all at once. With panic gripping my lungs, I whipped around. A serpent of shadow flicked at my heels, closing in an impending doom that knew no bounds. I ran, the flickering images of the haunting footage burning into my mind as shadows clawed at my back, their surreal hunger reaching for my very soul. The walls dimmed, pulsating with an otherworldly life, as one final echo resonated through the chamber. "Choose now. Embrace your fate or flee and leave us to suffer." I staggered back, torn between the cursed souls desperate for companionship and the light of freedom tantalizingly close. And just as I made my decision, the shadows lunged forward, coiling around my wrists, squeezing tighter, blurring my vision until all that remained was a deep, consuming darkness. "Choose." Their voices boomed, reverberating into the void as everything faded into a chilling silence. And without warning, an unspeakable revelation hit me. What if choosing meant sealing another's fate? The darkness cackled in delight, threatening to envelop me altogether. In that moment, I was painfully aware a choice needed to be made before the darkness devoured all semblance of choice itself. But just as I opened my mouth to utter my decision, the shadows reverberated one last time, thrumming with something ancient and terrible as a figure emerged from the depths, their piercing eyes locked onto mine, and then I saw her, a whisper of the past, that haunting gaze meeting mine, and breath escaped my lips in a ragged gasp. "It's not over yet," she declared as the walls closed in once more, tearing my decision from me, and plunging me deeper into the abyss. The chilling dimness clung to me like an insidious fog, coiling around my throat. I found myself trapped in the throes of endless repetition, a labyrinthine nightmare of time and space where every choice echoed against the pulsating walls, thrumming with the weight of countless regrets. I was slipping ever deeper into despair, the boundaries of my reality unraveling further with each thought, each breath. Suddenly, in the heart of this consuming darkness, memories flickered around me like dying fireflies, images of twisted childhood laughter and pale faces, my family's faces, locked within the cruel grip of a curse that had mutated over generations, striking against the very core of our existence. And yet, among the tormentors, a familiar light began to shimmer in the murk. The girl, she appeared framed by shadows, a flicker of hope in a realm devoid of light. "You have to wake up," she cried, her voice pealing through the darkness, laden with urgency. "We are all connected. Break the cycle." The shadows writhed in agitation, howling their offense. They seemed to resent her tenacity, snarling around her delicate form, desperate to erase her completely. I could feel their piercing eyes closing in, the history of their torment ready to swallow us whole. Each beat of my heart resonated against the silent screams of lost souls, echoing with an unbearable weight that left it hard to breathe. Then the revelation struck me like a thunderclap: we weren't just bound by choice, we were intertwined through a horrifying legacy. Each ancestor was woven into this chaotic tapestry, a design of suffering and despair caused by one single curse, a familial darkness. "What do I need to do?" I gasped, struggling against the encroaching shapes that threatened to snatch me into their depths. "Find the true source," the girl urged, her voice strengthening amidst the cacophony. "The origin of the curse. Your family betrayed the one who loved them most. Only then can we be free." At that moment, the reality surrounding me surged violently, shifting like sand beneath my feet. The house felt alive, the shadows pulsating, demanding retribution, their hunger insatiable. Like ripples in water, memory flooded my being: the cursed ritual, the betrayal of innocence, my family's insatiable thirst for power over a bond they should have cherished. As the house twisted around me, reality split, and I found myself thrust into a recollected memory, a dim room filled with the richness of bygone days. The air was thick with desperation, a gathering of silhouettes steeped in their own wickedness, holding hands in an unholy pact against the one who had offered love. There she stood, my mother, pale and frail, eyes glistening with betrayal, her spirit close to breaking under the weight of their treachery. With sudden clarity, I felt the bonds of darkness coiling tighter, the air frigid with the echoes of my ancestors' betrayal. I watched as the flickering images unfolded, revealing my family's darkness hidden beneath masked smiles. "Help us," they called out, a desperate choir intertwining echoes of guilt and grief, spiraling around me as they reached out from the confines of that memory, feeding off my fear. But alongside the darkness, the girl's presence held strong. I clamped my fists, the truth blooming within like steel. I was not merely a spectator in this horrid legacy, I was part of that lineage. The horror of past sins bound us, it was time to confront what lay beneath. "I can break the cycle," I shouted, my voice rising above the writhing shadows, grabbing hold of the burgeoning strength coursing through me. "I refuse to let betrayal be our fate." And with an intensity one didn't know I possessed, I reached into the suffocating darkness, focusing on the swirling echoes of pain, a desperate love intertwined with anguish, time warped as I summoned the depths of my being. The shadows recoiled, sensing a shift, aware that choices weren't the chains binding me, it was fear. And as the fear receded, so did the shadows that clung to me. I felt a surge, a flash of light that shattered the chokehold of the nightmare and unlatched the depths of their sorrow. What followed was a cacophony shattering realities colliding. My family's anguished cries merged with the echoes of a bitter laughter that roared through the walls, the curse revealing its grotesque form. You think you can choose love? It lashed out, a swirling mass of shadows reshaping into the likeness of twisted figures from the past. I closed my eyes against that corporeal evil, letting the memories swirl around me. But then, amidst the chaos, the girl's face broke through. Fight for us. Embrace the love, but confront the sacrifice. And suddenly, clarity flooded back. I remembered a child standing amid the shadows, tears rolling down her face, hands reaching out in a plea for connection with the essence of love left behind. You were the one who believed in us, I whispered, turning to face the malevolent force. And I will carry that belief. In a feat I thought impossible, I twisted toward the encroaching shadows, feeling the warmth of the girl's spirit radiating against the cold dread. This ends now. I screamed, summoning that latent strength in me. In a shockwave, a brilliant light enveloped the shadows, washing over everything, waking the very echoes of fate entwined within the walls. The air thickened, sparking with energy, as the darkness shrieked and recoiled in disbelief, unraveling into silence. But even amidst the brilliance, I knew the truth was far from solved. Though the shadows disbanded, their essence fragmented but not obliterated, lingering in the periphery like whispers just out of reach. It's not over. There's still one left, I heard the girl warn, her form flickering like a distant star in the fading light, and in that fleeting moment of clarity, I understood the remnants would always remain, waiting to claim another, an eternal link to the horror, the cycle waiting to be ignited once more. I stared back into the void that hung just beyond our reality, trembling, for even as I embraced the light, there are shadows waiting to rise. As I turned toward the door that led out of this nightmare, the horrifying truth rolled off my tongue, settling heavily in my chest. Not everything can be saved. I felt a shiver race through me, and I knew the darkness was never entirely defeated. And that was when I saw my reflection in a cracked mirror, clinging to the remnants of the past. I was one of them now. The final words it echoed through the silence, an unsettling promise, together forever. A chilling laughter chased me out, whispering in the recesses of my mind long after I had fled.